if you're pregnant for the first time, how are you feeling about that upcoming birth? Perhaps you have feelings of nervousness, anxiety, perhaps you're even feeling terrified. First of all, please know that this is completely normal, and most women feel this way when they're facing their first pregnancy and birth. But also, is it hardly surprising that most of us feel this way when we're conditioned our entire lives to think of birth as something as painful and scary? Welcome back to my channel, Flora Lily Birth School. My name is Ruth and I'm a certified hypnobirthing instructor. And in today's video, I'm going to help you understand how fear impacts your birthing body. And I'm going to share some really useful tips on how you can help shift your mindset so that you're going into your birth with more confidence. First of all, it's helpful to think about why we are so fearful when it comes to labour and birth. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, it's because we've been conditioned our entire lives to fear birth. But how? Think about things that you've watched on TV, all these dramatised births on soap operas. Even UK TV shows like One Born Every Minute. People are cast for that TV show. They pick births that are going to be fun to watch, high risk, lots of drama. Everything we've seen is all to keep our attention. And anything positive quickly escapes our mind. And we rarely hear the good, calm, normal, positive birth stories. We only tend to come across the ones that shock us. And this is purely for entertainment. I've also noticed that when people do come out and speak about positive births, they are mocked or criticised. I recently saw somebody interviewed on TV who talked about how she breathed her baby out. And she got so heavily criticised. People were writing awful things online. And I just thought, even though there are positive birth stories and they do exist, people don't seem to want to hear it or don't believe it. Even when we're growing up, the education system does not seem to teach us enough about our bodies. We don't even have an in-depth knowledge about periods, and therefore we also have very little knowledge about the full process of birth and what's going on. We have very little understanding. So all we have to go on are the stories that we're told or the dramatized scenes that we've seen on TV. And usually it's women screaming, in pain, crying, laying on their backs, with doctors peering in with their legs wide open. And it just doesn't look like something that's going to be fun or that we want to go through. It looks painful and unbearable. So when we've built up this narrative in our mind that birth is very scary and painful because of everything that we've seen, this is all we have to go on. And therefore, we're going in with a lot of fear, a lot of the fear of the unknown, also because we don't physically know what it's going to feel like, but we've seen what it might be like. So the fear that we're carrying and the fear that we're taking with us into our labour and birth is going to have a massive impact on our birthing bodies and that process. So if we don't address these fears, it's going to have a massive impact on your body during labour. So let's talk about how this fear impacts your birthing body. So if you end up in a situation that makes you feel really afraid, your body is going to shift into its survival mode. Adrenaline will be released, which is the fight or flight hormone. And of course, this is really great if you're running away from an actual danger, but during labour, it can really work against you. And the trouble is, your brain can't differentiate between what's an actual threat and a perceived threat. It will respond to both. It will activate fight or flight for both. So for example, when you're having a nightmare, that's not actually happening, but your brain doesn't understand that that's not a real situation. So you might find yourself waking up, sweating, shaking, you might scream. Your body has gone into fight or flight mode. Your heart might be beating rapidly because it's responding to the nightmare that you're having. Its aim is to protect you. You also might have an irrational fear of dogs, for example. And when you're out taking a walk in the park and you see a dog, your body goes into fight or flight mode. You might see it running towards you and your heart might start to beat really fast. And it's in that moment that you decide whether you're going to defend yourself from it jumping up at you, or you might need to get out of there or get away from that dog really quickly. However you feel about a situation, and if you're really scared and fearful, that fight or flight mode is going to be activated, and it's there to protect you and keep you safe from dangers. But of course, labour and birth shouldn't be seen as a dangerous situation. So let me break down how that fear is actually going to impact your body. When adrenaline is released into your body, your fight or flight mode hormone, this suppresses oxytocin, which is the driving hormone in labour and birth. It's the hormone that gets your uterus contracting. It is a very crucial hormone that you need flowing around your body, but adrenaline will stop this. Being in fight or flight mode and having adrenaline released into your body also tenses up your body and all your muscles. So again, thinking about that dog running towards you. If you're fearful of something, sometimes you tense up. And the same will happen in labour and birth. So if we're tensing our body and tensing our muscles, we're making it really difficult for our uterus to contract and for our cervix to dilate and open. It also increases your perception of pain. So things are going to feel a lot more worse than what they should. And then you'll end up in this cycle of fear, tension, and pain. And that will just keep going round. You're fearful, so you tense up. Your uterus can't work effectively. You start to feel more pain. And then that just confirms the fear you had to begin with, that it's painful and awful. So you tense up again. Things get more painful. Then you're more fearful and you just keep going round and round. The other reason why your uterus won't be able to work effectively during labour and birth is because if your fight or flight response is activated, all your lovely oxygenated blood will be drawn away from your uterus and sent to your arms and legs so that you can fight or run away. Therefore, having less oxygenated blood in the uterus also makes it a lot harder for it to work and contract and do the job that it's supposed to do. Again, creating more tension and pain. So this is why you might often hear about labour and birth being so painful and so overwhelming. And it's usually fear that creates these challenges, not the process of birth itself. So now that we know that fear and our fight or flight response has the biggest impact on birth, what can we do to try and eliminate that fear and anxiety? So I'm going to talk you through 5 different tools that you can use to try and help eliminate some of the fears that you have surrounding labour and birth, so that you can walk into it with much more confidence, feeling much more empowered. Once you are feeling more confident and empowered, it means that you can stop your fight or flight mode from being activated and allow your body to get on with the job it's supposed to do, and you will be able to support that process. So number 1, because the school education has failed us, learn about birth. Learn in depth everything you can possibly know about birth. And I feel like you can never know too much. It is really important that you have a deep understanding about the process of birth, about what your body is physically doing, what it needs to be supported, and each step of the birth. What is the process? What's going on? Once you actually understand what's going on in your body and what the process is, it does start to eliminate a tiny bit of fear. It starts to eliminate that fear of the unknown, because when you don't know what's going on, you feel powerless. Knowledge is going to give you power over the fears that you have. So I would suggest that you read a book, pick up a hypnobirthing book. I recommend the Calm Birth Method. I would go to an antenatal course. I would go to a hypnobirthing course. I would just soak up every little bit of information you possibly can. Follow Instagram accounts, look on YouTube. Try and get as educated on birth as you possibly can. Knowledge is power. Once you have all that knowledge and understanding of birth, you can start to replace any worries you have with trust. Trust in yourself, trust in your body, trust in the process. The second thing that you can do is start to tackle specific fears that you have. So yes, we can have a general worry about birth, but what are particular things that stand out in your mind? What is making you the most worried? Is it the pain? If it's the pain, go and make sure you have a real deep understanding of why you might experience pain. What's going on in the body? What are contractions? What's actually happening? How can you reframe your mind around that pain? How can you work with that pain? There's actually no way to know what level of pain you're personally going to experience. Everyone feels something different. We also know that tension creates more pain. So if the pain is what's really worrying you, how can you get educated on it? How can you pick up tools and techniques to ensure that you can feel more comfortable? Get educated, get some knowledge, and understand how you can reframe your mind and work with it. Perhaps another particular fear you have is that you might end up having an emergency C-section. So again, go and get really educated on C-sections. Make sure you understand everything about them. Have a look at positive C-sections online. Watch C-section vlogs. There are some beautiful C-sections out there that can help reassure you. Make sure you understand them. Make sure you know that you can have involvement in them. You can have a say. You can have preferences. Again, knowledge is power. The more you start to understand about birth and different processes and different outcomes and things that can happen, you start to get more and more knowledge, and you start to think, okay, I understand that. I know that. This is making me feel more confident, more empowered. Now I've got this knowledge, I can use it to move forward. The other thing that you might find really helpful to do is to write down all your worries. Write down the things that are causing you to feel anxious. When we keep things in our head, they just sort of get bigger and bigger, and they can feel really overwhelming. What really helps is to get them out of our head and onto paper. Share them with someone else that we trust. Speak to a close friend. Speak to your husband or your birthing partner. Speak to a midwife. That classic saying, a problem shared is a problem halved. Sometimes it takes the weight away of what we're feeling and can just make us feel so much better. The third tool that you can use and practice is your breathing. Now, yes, of course, we breathe every day. It's something that we do without having to think about. But now it's time to actually start thinking about your breathing and using it as a focus. It is such a powerful tool. So as an example, there's a particular breathing technique that you can use where you breathe in through your nose for 4 and out through your mouth, very slow and controlled, for 6 to 8 counts. When your out breath is double the length of your in breath, it's signaling to your nervous system to be calm. It's turning off that stress response. It's lowering your heart rate. It's getting you to a place of complete calm. This is a really important breathing technique because a lot of the time when we have watched these dramatized birthing scenes on TV, you will see them kind of hyperventilating, that chest breathing of, that absolute panic. And that is the type of breath that will signal to our body to activate our fight or flight response. It's a panicked breath. So when we start to use a slow, controlled breath, and when we start to calm down our nervous system and we give ourselves a focus, that is what helps you to feel in control of your body. But you do need to practice this a lot because you can't just go into your labor and birth and start trying to do this particular breathing technique where it just doesn't feel natural and you've not done it before. It takes a lot of practice. So start practicing it every day, breathing in for 4 and out for 8, out of your mouth, nice and slow and controlled. And see how it makes you feel in stressful situations. Perhaps if you're in traffic or something like that, start using this breath and feel your entire body starting to calm down. Feel your heart rate starting to steady and just feel yourself starting to feel a bit more centered and a bit more relaxed. The 5th tool I recommend you using is positive affirmations. This tool is really useful for helping you to try and rewire your mindset. A lot of people can feel a little bit uncomfortable to begin with when they start using positive affirmations. It feels a bit bizarre, but we do tend to reach for the negative thought first, always in any situation. So it can be really hard to shift that mindset to start reaching for the more positive thoughts. But we affirm things to ourselves all the time. I'm going to be late. I'm not very good at this. I'm really scared about birth. So if we start to try and reframe our mind, start to rewire how we feel, start to instill some confidence into ourselves. Because when you combine that with the knowledge that you start to gain about birth, the understanding that you start to have about birth, you can start to say, I trust my body. I feel safe. I trust the process. Rather than, it's going to be awful, I'm not going to be able to cope. It's about putting confidence into yourself, because even when you reach for that negative thought and say, it's going to be really awful, how do you know that? How can you predict that? You shouldn't be affirming something to yourself that hasn't even yet happened. And it's also not just saying, my birth's going to be perfect, things are going to go amazing. It's also about affirming, trusting yourself. So, if things do take a different path, I can navigate that with confidence. I can handle that in a calm way. Start to be positive. Start to think about, what are your negative thoughts? Write them out, reframe them, turn them into positive statements, stick them up around your wall, or you can find positive affirmations online, particular ones for pregnancy and birth. And if you start to do this every day, you start to change the narrative in your mind, and it all helps and it all contributes to you feeling more confident. This fifth tool that you can use can be very powerful, and it is visualization. The reason we suggest visualization in hypnobirthing is because, as I mentioned earlier on in the video, your brain cannot differentiate between what is real and what is imagined. So, for example, a lot of athletes use this technique. You might have heard David Beckham mention that he used to use this for his corners. And the reason that is so useful is because if you haven't done a particular event before and you're going into the unknown, if you imagine it over and over and over in your head, your brain will take that information so that when you come to do the actual event, it will feel familiar, and this will contribute to turning down your stress response and turning off your fight or flight. When you start to visualize regularly you being calm and empowered in your labor and birth, this becomes the norm. This information goes into your brain. And then when it comes to the day of your labor and birth, it feels more familiar. You can visualize your birth in any way that you want to, but most importantly, it's about visualizing how you're responding to birth, how you're feeling, how you're taking control. Even visualizing if things start to go off course. How are you staying in control of that situation? How are you still feeling confident? Visualizing yourself having all this knowledge, having all this power, and embracing every part of your labor and birth. An example I always use when I'm teaching my clients is the Olympic gold medalist swimmer Michael Phelps. Now, when he was training to be an Olympic swimmer, he used visualization regularly to train himself to be able to relax so he could do his races without that fight or flight being activated. And he prepared for all different types of scenarios, including his goggles filling up with water. And actually on one of his races, when he was doing the butterfly, his goggles did start to leak and he couldn't see a thing. But he reverted back to the visualization that he had used. He kept relaxed. His body was able to keep relaxed and keep swimming. The goggles didn't send him into a mode of panic. He kept going and he won that gold medal. So you can kind of see how visualization isn't this kind of woo-woo thing. It actually has an effect on the brain, and it helps to keep you relaxed in certain situations that you have not yet faced. You can do a mental rehearsal. So those are just 5 tools that you can use during your pregnancy to hopefully try and eliminate any fear and anxiety you've got around your birth and to help you feel more confident. It is all about preparation and it is all about knowledge. And I always say this, you would never wake up tomorrow and just go and run a marathon without any mental or physical preparation. You need to put in the time and the work to prepare for labour and birth. It is the biggest event of your life. I hope these tools have given you something though that you can go away and work with. I hope you're feeling a bit more excited to go and get more knowledge, to get more confidence, and to start incorporating this into your day and to start feeling more prepared. I personally use these tools. I know that they work. I had a first labour and birth that was really terrifying because I wasn't prepared, and I went on to have 2 incredible home births, and just having that knowledge changed everything for me. Thank you so much for watching. please do go ahead and subscribe to my channel because I'm going to be uploading even more content to help you prepare for your labour and birth. Lots of tools and techniques for hypnobirthing too. I hope to see you on my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, bye-bye.